I've been a board member of Fistico for quite some time, but unfortunately, because of my busy schedule, I have to step down. But I am a board member for the Risk Management Association, which is an association of bankers. And it just really lends to my background as to why I'm here today. I'm still involved in commercial finance and involved with banker associations such as the RMA, which is it's a 100-year-old nonprofit organization worldwide. And at the same token, I do proudly say that I am a board member for the Pomona Chamber of Commerce. I think the bottom line there is that I'm busy. So before I go on, I want to introduce my partner here, Steve Rhee. Steve Rhee's a commercial broker. I will let him speak about himself, but he's going to be joining me. And I apologize, I'm a little late today. I underestimated the traffic coming down from Inland Empire, so I did not mean in disrespect. We have one more partner who's going to join us in this engagement, John Osborn, who's a vice president of Chase Commercial Lending, SBA Finance. So, Steve, why don't you come on up really fast? I was asked to come by and basically have a discussion with you folks, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And the topic of our discussion today is why commercial? Why commercial real estate? Steve, come on up over here, get closer to me here. So, anyhow, I was thinking about as to what I would say about why commercial real estate. There's just really so many answers to that particular question. It can be as broad as the many backgrounds that we have here today, but the best way for me to answer that is to why I chose commercial real estate for myself. And I'd like to start by talking about my background. As Mel had read, I'm a former banker. Been with Bank of America. My last position there over 11 years ago was in commercial lending or business lending. I loan to small businesses, SBA financing, conventional financing, etc. But more importantly, what I took away from banking is that I learned how to become a business development officer. Now, as a commercial real estate broker, that is a key asset, a key skill to have. In fact, it's a key asset for any of you to have since you're in real estate or whatever business you're doing. You know, to translate that, it's the ability to get business. And for you to have the ability to get business, there are certain fundamentals that you got to have. And let me make it simple. You've got to be a people person, right?
Right.
Your clients got to like you. If your clients don't like you, guess what? They won't give you any business. You've got to be ethical. You've got to walk a straight line. You've got to learn. You've got to be someone that adds value to your client. Okay? Ultimately, you know, the way I see it, I'm a big picture guy. Most people know me, I don't like details. I just like to look at the big picture. You help your clients. You add value to them. More importantly, from the business sense, you make your clients rich. And my clients understand that about me. And that's why I have a ton of clients. And I still have a ton of clients even today, during the low times and the high times. And I'm very proud to share stories that I have and to tell you, and to kind of mentor, using my stories to mentor other new commercial real estate brokers that are coming into business. But let me not stray away from the reason why I'm here today, basically. So why commercial real estate? Why did I choose commercial real estate? It was just a natural position for me. The way I see it is that I used to finance and bank commercial real estate assets, lend to them. Today, I trade them, okay? I've gotten to know a lot of brokers out there, and I think my background as a vice president of the bank just really complemented what I do today as a commercial real estate broker. And one of those fundamental things, again, that sets me aside from the average broker is, again, my background as in understanding my clients' businesses, understanding how the economy works, reading my clients' needs, taking care of their needs, and anticipating their growth, or perhaps when it's time to sell. And the biggest satisfaction for me is when a client calls me 5 years later and say, "Hey, George, I know you've been busy. It's time for me to sell my building or to buy a bigger building." Or, "Hey, George, I need to buy another building," or perhaps I need to look into investment. That's the greatest satisfaction to me. And I'm sure, just like when your client calls you and says, "Hey, guys, it's time to buy another house," or something like that, it's kind of the same thing. And that's kind of one of the best takeaways that I have. And today, in the commercial real estate world today, I work with different groups in my office. We actually work with smaller deals from $1 million to about, I think the biggest deal we're working on right now is about $300 million. I'm very proud and happy to be working with groups in my office. And I say groups is because when you're dealing at that higher dollar value, it not only working with a group of knowledgeable, professional, ethical people just lends a hand to make the deal work, basically. So again, why commercial real estate for me? It's because it just made sense. Fundamentally, I came from business, and you gotta have business knowledge when you're a commercial real estate broker. Okay? I'd like to take the time to introduce my buddy, Steve Rhee here. Steve has been with us for about 8 months, and I am so impressed with his success as to how quickly he picked up on that, and I'll let him talk about his background, how he's thinking, and what he's pursuing, and what made him quickly succeed in this business, because typically it takes at least 6 months to really get it if you don't have a business background as a commercial real estate broker. Now, when I say business background, perhaps you owned your business in the past, you just got an easy understanding of how businesses go, or you're self-taught, whatever it is. But the average time for a commercial real estate broker to really absorb enough to make an impact out there is typically 6 months. Now, I personally, as a director of commercial real estate for Remax Commercial in Ontario, I look for talent, basically. And you know the saying, sometimes you just have it, and sometimes you don't. And I'm not saying if you don't have it today, you can't get it. You just got to be a good student and willing to really take on a mentor and listen to what he or she would like to teach you. But nonetheless, commercial real estate world is a great career. It's a great path. It's a great way to make wealth. It's a great way to invest. But again, I will repeat to you, fundamentally, you have to study business, because that's the way that's how your clients are gonna communicate with you. So business. With no further ado, I wanna bring Steve here and kind of just take a few minutes to speak about his background. Again, Steve has been with us for about 8 months. I'd like to ask him to kind of tell you where he's coming from, how he took the approach, because there was a time when Steve came up to me and said, George, I don't know what specialty I should go after. As you know, commercial real estate has a lot of facets. And I'll let him do that and where he is today. Steve?
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mel, for inviting us today. Appreciate that. So my background is not as extensive in the real estate market or the finance world. For the last 17 years, up until maybe 12 months ago, I was in the technology world, high tech in Silicon Valley. My forte was to specialize in startup companies. So you work with investors, they give you some money, you develop a concept, you bring it to market, and you plan it from A to Z. So a lot of it was business modeling. And through the whole process, you're always trying to find value in everything you do, whether it's hiring, the marketing value, the return on dollars, the value of putting money into your customers, again, the marketing and whatnot. So I think to sum up my 17 years of business, I have a sense for valuation, ideas of value, and how to read people. I got my MBA in 2007 from UCI, so I have a master's degree in business administration, especially in finance and startups. So a few years ago, I married into the real estate business. I was high tech back then, Silicon Valley, traveling all over the world, especially in South America was my territory. Married into the real estate business. My wife's side of the business is mainly residential. So from the outside of that, never understood the real estate market. Now I'm living it day to day. So I'll go to a dinner, I'll go to a Christmas party, we'll get invited to someone's housewarming, we'll chit chat, I'll go home and ask my wife, that person, this person, their background, and very simple people, worked very hard, and they did well in residential. I was shocked, actually. So it took me a few years to get my license. Then at a cross point a few years ago, I decided, okay, I'm gonna quit my business, start up a business, and maybe dabble into real estate. So half of this other business and half of real estate, commercial real estate for that matter. And I tried that for a year, and it doesn't work. As you guys know, you can't juggle multiple projects and try to be successful out of it.
Hold on a second. I remember Steve telling me that he was doing that, half real estate and half business. My reaction was like, huh?
Yeah, so 12 months of struggling, I decided to give up the other business, hire a few people to run that business. Of course, my margins are dropping, my labor costs are going up. But within really 6 months of full-time in commercial real estate, I picked up about $11 million worth of listings. Just through a lot of it luck, a lot of it following the program that they've set up for me. But a lot of it's just, like George was saying, like you guys understand, it's connecting with the client, trying to understand what the needs and wants are, and trying to deliver as quickly and as efficiently as possible. The sales cycles are longer than residential, but on the other side, I think there's less emotions involved. It's a numbers game. You know, there's no blue painted wall. There's no my grandmother lived with me for 40 years. You know, there's none of this backyard, you know, barbecue. None of that. It's all that is taken out. I know it's important for the residential, but for commercial, it's straight numbers. Developing your clientele, your networks, cold calling, door knocking. It's the same process. It's just a longer process cycle to get a deal done. Commission checks are bigger. Of course, there's a lot of rejection, but if your mindset's in the right place, you work hard, you surround yourself with good people, you can be successful. So I started with a group of people in the office, all probably around at the same time, 8 months. And I looked at all my peers, and none of them have significant listings. And I'm just shocked. I think listings are easy to get. I think the hard part is selling them. Yeah, I have 1 or 2 listings that might be overpriced. But for the most part, selling commercial properties is very, very difficult. It's very difficult. But again, the checks are bigger, and your network of clientele is much larger because they're dealing with bigger dollar amounts. So of course, they're going to be more cautious, and the deal has to be right. So that's my job, is to cater to the clients, to give them what they're looking for, to find new clients, connect some dots, try to make some money, and take care of the family. Speaking of family, I have 2 young kids, a 4.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So literally they're 16 months apart. So starting up my other business, getting my license, trying to launch this was very hectic times for us. It was not easy. My wife was expanding her businesses, and she had a family member that got ill very seriously. So it was tough times, but you just got to grind away. There's no choice. So that's my experience for a new agent who dabbled in trying to do things half-time. And I guess my answer is you can't do anything half, because the other half, your competition is going to eat you up. So you got to compete 110% to be successful.
I guess the question for you, Steve, is why commercial?
So I married into the business. My mother-in-law is a pretty successful residential agent, and I wanted to do residential actually, because I going to these dinners and meetings and seeing my family members, I saw that they were driving nice cars, living in big houses, you know, the big watches, the big rings, whatever you want to call it, the superficial stuff. But one of my senior family members said, you should do commercial. You're cut for commercial. You know, you have 17 years of business experience. You could probably relate to a lot of these international investors. And I did a lot of traveling in South America. And let me tell you something. For the residential world, the residential agents, if you despise door knocking, looking at phone numbers, calling people, you don't want to do that for 2-3 hours. In my past life, I had to get on a plane from door to door, get down to Sao Paulo, transfer to another airport, get to my hotel, 24 to 30 hours door to door before I get to a different country. Get cleaned up, have dinner, you know, the song and pony dance, the whole shebang, to meet a customer to try to get a deal done. For years, in a different language. Portuguese, I don't speak a lick of Portuguese. But technology is different, because technology, everybody seems to speak English, so that kind of works its way through the system. But I had to get on a plane and fly to another country to get my deal done, to get my commission. And when I hear and I see my peers in my office now complain, or you don't see them hustling, I'm like, you guys are stupid. Do what I did, get on a plane and try to find your customer, versus picking up your phone and maybe driving around for 1 or 2 hours a day. Who cares? That is nothing. If you do it right, you can make some money out of it and meet good people. So.
Thank you, Steve. I just want to add on to what, Steve. really proud of Steve. He's really come a short way because he listened. So, I do remember having conversations with Steve and saying, hey, you own your business. Why residential? I mean, it's just so natural for you to just come into commercial real estate. You know, in terms of success in commercial real estate, they're just basic fundamentals. And if you follow those fundamentals, you'll do well. The question at the end of the day is how successful do you want to be, or how not successful do you want to be? Now, you know, I've been in this business for quite a long time, and I like to see movers and shakers. Now, if you're thinking about doing it part-time, I recommend that you don't, basically. There's just so many opportunities out there to be a real mover and shaker in this business, and I know a lot of them, and I also know a lot of ones that are struggling. You know, I've always told my office, or the guys in my office, we got about 35 men and women in our offices, and I'd say 80-90% of them have deals moving, in fact. So, is that, you know, you've got to have a market position. I was just talking about that yesterday. You've got to have a market presence, okay? If you want to be a commercial real estate broker, or if you want to be anything or anybody, try to be one of the best, basically. But like I said, my advice is, if you're going to get into it all the way, just like anything else, basically. And you will success. If you're right and your mind is in the right place, it will happen for you. But just stick to the fundamentals. And with that said, I don't have a lot of time, but I just kind of want to leave with a couple of things. You know, as I keep saying this, I come from the banking world, et cetera. You know, there's one thing that I always thought of back there when I'm mentoring a young commercial real estate broker is basically when a client thinks about you and people look at you, or other brokers look at you, and I always think about what is an agent's net worth, basically. When I say net worth, not money-wise, but what are you worth to the market? Who are you? What markets do you work? You know, what have you done, etc. When I say what's a net worth of an agent, to me, really, I've got a simple formula for that. What's a worth of an agent? I hope you guys are following me on this. What's a net worth of an agent? What your value is in your marketplace is equal to the size of your net worth. Okay, I hope you guys are following me. So your net worth is equal to the size of how big your net worth is. And I hope you understand that. It comes from our banking world. Secondly, when you're in this business, what's important is to have your client base or clientele. And really, how do you get that? How do you create loyalty with clients that come back to you day to day or year to year, et cetera? Well, I will say, and I think there's a saying out there that says royalty equals loyalty. So treat your client well, follow up, call your clients. If you don't, someone else will. And with that said, one thing I wanted to end with is basically when you're dealing with prospects, what's the first thing that you want to do when the buyer calls you up and says, hey, I want to buy a building. I want to buy a house. I'm sorry?
Qualifying.
Exactly. Same thing with commercial real estate world, except our pre-qualification is a little bit more complex. Well, I guess with today's financing, it's pretty complex now. But in the world of commercial real estate financing, they not only look at your credit score or your personal tax returns, but they also evaluate your business. And that can be really key to saving your time, energy, and making sure you got a deal here at hand. So with that said, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce John Osborn, my colleague who came from Temecula Valley. And I believe you left at 6 in the morning? Just to get her to see you. I call that dedication. Now, I've known John for 20 years, and I'm not that old, so. With that said, John used to head a CDC, Certified Development Corporation, which is the SBA guaranteed portion of SBA, basically, and he was the nation's #1 SBA provider. So, today he leads Chase Commercial Financing, SBA, and I'd like to just, introduce him to you and just speak for a few minutes because, again, pre-qualifying your clients, whether commercial or residential, is key to your time. So, with no further ado, John.
Thank you, George. Hey, sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I've been told I got 5 minutes, so I'll try to make this quick and concise. Believe it or not, I've been doing this for 25 years, and in my 25 years, probably once or twice every year, we'll get a deal from a residential broker. You'll see that you'll run across a potential commercial real estate transaction maybe once or twice in your career. And I don't have any experience in residential lending. The only residential loan I've ever done was for my own personal house. But I have a lot of years of experience with commercial. And there's 2 commercial products out there that are offered by the SBA. One is a 7A program. That's a bank-generated program where we actually lend the money to the borrower and we get a guarantee from the government. And then the other one, which is George mentioned, is what's called the SBA 504 program, where the bank, such as a Chase, makes a first deed of trust loan and the SBA does a second deed of trust loan. And the advantages to the borrower under either of those programs is they can get in for as little as 10% down to buy a piece of commercial real estate. Now it has to be owner occupied under either of those programs. At Chase we offer investor products, but you're typically coming in with 25% down. So I don't think that you'll run across any of those type of transactions. But most of what we do is owner occupied. And as George says, it's a little more cumbersome, a lot more requirements than what you see on residential financing. So in addition to looking at a person's tax returns, we have to look at the operating entity, which would be the business that they own, whether it's a C Corp, S Corp, or sole proprietorship. Because we're going to look for the guarantees from all of the principal individuals, the operating entity, and in 95% of these cases, the people that are buying the building, they're going to set up what's called an LLC, or they'll already have an LLC. And in our lingo, we call that the eligible passive company. So all of those entities are going to be guarantors. So we have to do a cash flow analysis based on what we call global, the operating entity, the LLC, and their personal financial statements along with their tax returns. All that typically just takes a couple of days once we get all the financial information from the potential applicants. We also have to do environmentals, but under both of the SBA programs, we can actually be flexible if the appraisals come in short. If it's done conventionally, we really don't have any wiggle room. They got to have at least 20% in on a conventional loan. The other thing we have to do is we have to do an environmental, at a minimum, transaction screen analysis, which is something I know you don't have to do in residential. We have to do that on 100% of every deal that we do. We verify tax returns. We have to get 2 years minimum tax returns, and we also have to get personal resumes. So there's a little bit more work that's required in that, but believe it or not, if you're doing a straight purchase transaction, that only takes, we can get them done in as quick as 30 days, depending upon how long it takes the appraisal. And a commercial appraisal is not like a residential appraisal. It has to be bank ordered. Individuals cannot order the appraisal, that's by law. And they typically take 2 to 3 weeks. There's certain requirements that the federal government requires, and that appraisal has to be in there before we can make a loan on that property. So there's a lot more work involved, but in terms of timing, I think that we get our loans done just as quick as what they do in residential. So I'm getting the signal. I guess my time's up. No time for questions. I mean, I don't know if I hope that helped give you a little bit of information, but before I go, if you want my information, I have my cards. Feel free to give George or myself a call, and we can talk in more details.